So today we're going to talk about when hard things hit, because I'm going to be very real. Over the last few days, there's been some hard in my community. There's been some hard with a lot of my friends. There's been hard. And so we're going to talk about what in the world happens when there is intensely hard things. And I'm going to share a story with you guys about, as a therapist, who all of us, first of all, let me say this, all of us are going to go through hard. And by hard, God says that in this world you will have trouble. But He tells us He's going to be with us through the trouble. In this world, you will have trouble. And for me, I equate that to trauma. We all will face trauma. We all will face hardship. I can tell you that through the depths of some of the hardest things in my life, coming through them, on the back end, I can see the process of trauma in, with, and through them. So I'm going to share a little bit about one of my experiences, and I am very prayerful that that will shed light for the rest of us to share. Many of you know, who have been my friends for a long time, you know that about a little over 6 years ago when we had Hayden, that was one of the darkest times of my entire life. And that's a sad thing to say about the birth of your child. But what I haven't shared with very many people is exactly what happened behind the scenes during his story. Behind the scenes, I gave birth to this beautiful little baby boy. And moments after delivering him, I still hadn't delivered the afterbirth. I was still on the table. I could tell that things were not well. I could see a throng of nurses surrounding my newborn baby. I could see the doctor looking at him. I was still there waiting to deliver the afterbirth, feeling very powerless and incredibly afraid. And Jamie left my bedside to go to our child to see what was happening. And in that moment, you guys, one of the most pivotal experiences of my life that has changed my perspective on what happens with trauma started. In that moment, as soon as Jamie left my side to attend to our newborn child, this may sound wonky to those of you who are not faith-based. I don't care. This is what happened. I heard an audible voice in my head. I heard a voice. It didn't sound scary or dark, but the voice said this. It said, "Your child is going to die, and you are not going to be able to withstand it, so you need to separate from him." The voice spoke very matter-of-factly in my mind, as if it were truth. And in that moment, I flew out of my body, and I was no longer present. And for the next several weeks of our NICU journey, and actually several months thereafter, that voice ruled my day. And many people have said, "Rachel, who do you think that voice was?" Well, I'm going to tell you that voice is the opposite of God, because God is hope, God is peace, God is love, God is connection. That voice was about isolation. That voice was about fear. That voice was about separation and shutting down. That voice was about removal of love and heart. That voice was not God's voice. But I'm going to tell you, when I was listening to that voice and it was having its way with me, I couldn't pray. I couldn't connect with people. And I know that that is the voice of trauma. I know that it brought me from my prefrontal connection, loving, being able to be in reality part of my mind, and brought me deep into the deeper recesses of survival, of fight, flight, or freeze. I know that it brought me into the region of my amygdala and even just survival. I know that it separated me. Now, what I know about trauma is that that is what happens with trauma. It lodges itself within our bodies. It lodges itself within the parts of our mind where we cannot connect with other people. And I can tell you that even years later, after I did my own therapeutic work and did a lot of healing processing and have reestablished connection with God and His Word, that I have heard little reminiscent inklings of that voice. I heard it again just on Saturday when I was in the grocery store after hearing some really horrible news about in our community with children that shook me, that voice. And you guys, you know what that voice is telling me at the heart of it? That voice is the same voice that met Adam and Eve in the garden, that whispered to them, that said, did God really say? Are God's promises really true for you? Is it really true? Can you really trust Him? To me, that's where that voice always brings me, is that place of fear and doubt. It's the voice that wants me to wrap up my children in bubble wrap, or go to a deserted island with them and not expose them to the dangers of this world, even though I know that that is not logical. It's the voice that wants us in our place of pain to lick our wounds and circle the wagons and isolate and separate. Today it struck me, I was sitting with a little client, and we were discussing pain. We were discussing feelings of sadness and anger and anxiety and worry. And we were talking about how hard it is to allow people in to share in that place of pain with us. For anyone who is in that place of pain right now, I'm going to ask you, even though you don't feel like it, to detach from whatever is that spirit or voice within you that is telling you to separate, to get small. And I'm going to ask you to do something different. I'm going to give you this analogy. You see, because that voice is telling you when you are in pain, emotional, physical pain, it tells you separate and grow small. And it's saying, hold your hands in a little tiny cup. And it says you are responsible for holding all of it in your individual hands. Even though the pain is so great, the fear is so great, the worry is so great, the sadness and grief, the loneliness is so great, that your two little hands in a cup cannot contain it all. It will overflow. It will spill over. Because you see, we were never meant to contain it all ourselves. What I did was I asked this little one if I could hold her hands, and together our cup got bigger. You see, because together we can hold more of the pain than we ever were meant to by ourselves. And then we can ask another trusted person to join hands with us. and experience the pain, because you guys, we have to experience it. We can't just push it away, shove it down. At some point, we're going to have to feel it. But it's better when it's felt together. And here's the other thing, if we can remember that there's a God who holds all of it in his hands, and his hands are so big and great. And not only that, they couple with ours and hold ours in his hand. We can let the tears fall. We can let the anger out. We were never meant to contain it and hold it on our own. Ever, ever, ever. That's the lie of the great deceiver, who says it's too much to share with other people. You can't trust them. Anywho, that's thoughts for today. Bye, guys.